Welcome back to 10-Minute Prophecy, where we go through the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation verse by verse in bite-sized chunks. Thank you for joining us again. We hope that this journey through Bible prophecy has been enlightening, whether you are new to prophecy or have studied prophecy in the past. As always, if you haven't seen the previous presentations, please watch them, as each prophecy builds on each other. The link to our playlist is down in the description below. You will also find the video on the non-denominational Protestant biblical prophetic interpretation method that has proven itself over and over again in world events, both past, present, and can be relied upon to understand the future. See the link in the description below. We had left off on Revelation chapter 12 with Satan and God's people in a battle. Here now we are taken back to the beginning of this war between good and evil. Verses 7 to 12 say, "And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time." Here we see an expansion of what was briefly mentioned in verse 4. There was war in heaven. The word war in the original language actually means a war of words. The Bible is clear that the conflict in heaven was not physical but verbal, a war of ideas. As we read on, we are taken back to the time before creation, and two key figures are introduced, Michael and the dragon, who is identified as Satan. Just as a reminder from our studies in Daniel 10 and 12, Michael is another name for Jesus, not a separate angel. Let's examine this further by looking at all the instances in the Bible where Michael is mentioned. To begin with, the name Michael in Hebrew means he who is like God. In Jude 9, Michael is referred to as the archangel, a term which in Greek means chief angel or head angel. It's important to remember that angel simply means messenger. In 1 Thessalonians 4:16, we read that the voice of the archangel will raise the dead. Whose voice is that? John 5:28 makes it clear that it is the voice of Jesus. No angel can raise the dead, only the one who created life can give it back. Furthermore, Daniel 10:21 refers to Michael as your prince. No ordinary angel is ever called our prince. This title is uniquely reserved for Jesus. When we compile all this information, we see that Michael is another name for Jesus. He is the chief messenger whose voice will raise the dead in Christ. Angels, being created beings, do not have that power. Therefore, Michael is not just another angel, he is Jesus himself. This makes sense, as only a member of the Godhead can lead all the angels, just like other names of Christ, Emmanuel, Son of Man, Prince of Peace. Michael is a title of Christ used when he is in the context of battle or conquest. This is similar to how earthly kings have multiple titles. Likewise, Satan has several titles, such as the devil, the accuser of the brethren, the serpent, and the father of lies. Returning to the text, we see that Jesus and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels in a war of words, a conflict of truth versus lies. Both sides had angels, indicating that Satan was once the exalted being Lucifer, who deceived a third of the angels, as seen in earlier passages. What was the lie that Lucifer embraced that caused this heavenly conflict? Isaiah chapter 14 verses 12 through 15 reveal it. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation, in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Here, God reveals the thoughts of Lucifer's heart. In Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 12 through 19, through an allegory using the king of Tyre, God shows the reason for Lucifer's fall and his ultimate judgment. These verses reveal that the root of Lucifer's lie was selfishness. He desired to rule over God, to take the kingdom for his own pride and glory. He rebelled against the laws of God's kingdom, seeking self-rule apart from God. As we saw in Isaiah, he believed he was better than God. The next part of the passage refers to Satan as that old serpent, the devil, and Satan, pointing us back to the fall of man in Genesis chapter 3. This strongly affirms the identity of the dragon. The passage continues, showing Christ's victory over Satan as Satan and his angels are cast down to the earth. Satan's role as the accuser of the brethren is noted. He accuses continually day and night. However, the victory is declared through the blood of the Lamb and through the testimony of the faithful. This clearly shows that salvation and victory over sin come only through Christ. Finally, heaven rejoices at Christ's triumph, as Satan can no longer operate there. However, a woe is pronounced upon the earth where Satan still has influence. His wrath is felt through sorrow, sickness, war, and death. But even in this, there is hope. Satan rages because he knows his time is short. Soon, just as Christ cast Satan out of heaven, Jesus, through the second coming, will deliver us from Satan's destructive power and wrath on earth. But first we must ask Jesus to deliver us out of Satan's power in our own lives. John chapter 3 verse 16 says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." We must believe and live in Jesus and not allow Satan to have power in our lives, and thus we will be free from his power. Finally, Revelation chapter 12 verses 13 to 17 tells us, "And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water, as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ." Here the verse picks up from where Satan is cast to this earth, and he persecutes God's people, and we are brought to the church after Christ had been taken up to heaven. Satan realized he had completely failed in his attempts to stop Jesus from his salvation work during his time on earth. Seeing this, he redirected his anger toward the church Jesus had established, attacking it with even greater intensity. At this point, we see the church described as going into the wilderness. This represents a time when the true church had to hide from public view and protect itself from persecution. The church that loudly demanded authority and paraded its power during the Dark Ages was not the true Church of Christ. That institution was the mystery of iniquity, a system where a man claimed to be God. In contrast, the mystery of godliness is God revealed as a man, which is Jesus. This great corruption of the faith came from a mix of Christianity and pagan beliefs, which we found out was the great papal system of worship and government. The true followers of Christ were in hiding, worshipping in secret, often in caves and remote valleys like those in the Piedmont region, where they kept the gospel alive during times of intense persecution. These groups of people, including the Waldenses, were Sabbath keepers, and God watched over them, protecting and sustaining them through his divine care. The imagery of eagle's wings given to the church symbolizes how quickly the true believers had to escape for their safety when this corrupt system, the man of sin, rose to power. It also shows how God helped them during this time. A similar image is found in Exodus chapter 19, verse 4, where God says to Israel, "You have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." The phrase "a time, times, and half a time," used to describe how long the church would be in the wilderness, matches the wording in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. Revelation chapter 12, verse 6 describes the same period as 1,260 days. Time in Hebrew equals 1 year. This helps us decode the time. One time equals 1 year, or 360 days. Times equals 2 years, or 720 days. And half a time equals half a year, or 180 days. A total of 1,260 days. Since these are symbolic, as we have found out in our previous studies, they represent 1,260 actual years. The flood from the serpent's mouth, actually represents the massive spread of false teachings from the papacy, which corrupted so many nations and gained control over civil governments for centuries. Through the papal power, Satan unleashed fierce persecution against the true church. History tells us that between 50 and 100 million people were killed during this time. Yet, the church was not completely destroyed. As Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, verse 22, "The days of suffering were shortened for the sake of God's faithful people." The earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the flood. This, actually symbolizes the rise of the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s. God raised up Martin Luther and other courageous reformers to reveal the true nature of the papacy and to break the grip of superstition that had kept people in spiritual bondage. When Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg, it sparked a movement that spread across Europe. According to a symbolic dream by Frederick of Saxony, the pen Luther used to write those theses reached across the continent and shook the Pope's authority. Many political leaders began to support the reformers. This was the beginning of a new era of spiritual light and religious freedom. God would not allow the darkness of false teachings to extinguish this new light. Johann Tetzel, known for selling indulgences, became furious, and Pope Leo reacted with rage. But it was too late. The power of the papacy was broken. People realized that they didn't have to obey the Pope's decrees. Instead, they had the God-given right to follow their own conscience, guided by the Bible. So, more and more people joined the movement, defending the true faith. Before long, Protestant nations began to emerge in places like Switzerland, Germany, Holland, England, Norway, and Sweden. These countries, became strong enough to protect the Church from the flood of papal persecution. In this way, the earth helped the woman. And it continues to help even today, as the spirit of the Reformation and religious freedom lives on in many of the world's leading nations. However, the dragon, Satan, he isn't finished yet. Revelation chapter 12, verse 17, speaks of a final burst of his anger aimed at the last generation of Christians, the remnant of the woman's offspring. The word remnant refers to what's left of the true church after the 1260 years of papal reign, and by definition it applies only to the final generation before Christ returns. If we truly are that generation, then, this final conflict over truth is not far off. This faithful remnant is described as those who keep God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus Christ. This shows the identifying marks of God's church which emerges after 1798. They keep the commandments of God in the last days because, among those who accept the 10 Commandments, the Sabbath remains the key point of difference in belief and practice from the churches who have accepted the papal authority. This idea is emphasized even more clearly in Revelation chapter 14, verses 9 to 12. The Church also has the testimony of Jesus. We will discover more of what this means later. This concludes Revelation 12 and our time together. Thank you for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed this nugget of prophecy. Join us next time where we will start Revelation 13, which will bring us to today. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. We look forward to seeing you again.